Booktube, we are back. Let's go over my top 10 books of 2024 so far. Before we get into the books, yes, we are in a new location. This is actually where I read on a daily basis. We will do a bookshelf tour at some point, don't worry, but we have more important things to go over today. I've read 29 books so far in 2024, 29 great books so far in 2024. And this has been excruciating to get him down to 10. I would go over all 29, but I think going over the top 10 would be good enough for a video like this. It was so excruciating because there were some books in series that probably would have made this list. However, one of my criteria is to pick the best book in the series to put on my top 10. Otherwise, spoiler, most of Stormlight Archives would have been on this list. But I am glad that I narrowed it down to this top 10. And before I go into my top 10, I ask you all, we're more than halfway over this year in 2024. What are some of your top 10 books? Do some of my top 10 books match what you're looking for? But with that said, no more further ado, no more housekeeping. Let's go over my top 10 books so far, 2024. Coming in at number 10, we have The Reformatory. As you all know, my favorite genres are fantasy and sci-fi, but I picked up this historical fiction this year, not knowing what to expect, and I was completely blown away. So this story follows two siblings as they navigate the Jim Crow South in the 1950s, two black siblings, and one of them, Robbie Stevens, gets sentenced to jail, or what I would say not jail, but something called Reformatory. It's a reformatory school for boys called Gracetown. And this is low-key based off a true story. You can definitely look it up. I will provide some context up here. But this story follows him as he navigates that Gracetown School for Boys. The school is low-key haunted, but not in a way that's like Ghostbusters way. These ghosts are ghosts of boys, black and white, who have suffered the injustices of this reformatory. And you also follow his sister, Gloria Stevens, as she tries to navigate this world and tries to get him out of jail, out of this Gracetown reformatory. And I think the reason I'm calling it jail because it low key reads like a jail, but it's really a reformatory school for boys. And this coming at number 10 really blew me away because it's contrary to my natural genres that I read, but such great writing by Tananarive Due, such great characters too as well. Like you really feel for these characters every step of the way, and the hauntedness was a nice touch to it. This book was truly, truly amazing. Coming in at number 9 is Artificial Wisdom, a sci-fi by debut author Thomas Weaver. Now, this book is taking book talk by storm, and I feel like it should be talked about a lot more on BookTube as well. This book being a debut novel by this author, he took so many risks. So while this is a sci-fi, this includes a murder mystery at the center of it. It includes politics at the center of it. It's an election year when it comes to this. And he took so many risks with this that at first when I heard everything that was involved in it, I was a little thrown aside before I picked it up. I'm like, there's no way a debut author is going to be able to pull this off. And man, does Thomas Weaver pull this off. So you follow Marcus Tully, who's a journalist in the year 2050, as he is stuck and thrown into this murder mystery as well as this climate change debate too as well. And Thomas Weaver does a good job at weaving all these stories together, all these characters together. And one of the main characters is not even a human. There is an artificial intelligence being running to rule the world. And you have to vote for them. Or you vote for a regular person. It's up to you to read this book and see who wins. Artificial Wisdom by Thomas Weaver, number 9 spot, solidified, certified, stamped for sure. Coming in at number 8 is Morningstar. Morningstar is the third book in the Red Rising trilogy following Red Rising and Golden Sun. Red Rising, the first book, I thought it was just okay. I really wasn't going to contain the series, but I had a lot of people on TikTok yelling at me, screaming at me to contain the series. And boy, was I happy that I did, because I ended up reading Golden Sun. And Golden Sun by itself was amazing. Had some Red Wedding vibes in there. If you know, you know, from Game of Thrones. And I was so happy that I ended up continuing the series. And I had high hopes for Morningstar, but it wasn't like something where I'm like, it's going to be amazing. And Morningstar was the best book out of the three of those books. Truly enjoyed it. Darrow, amazing. Severo, amazing. And we'll see if I continue the series, but Morningstar, chef's kiss, and it deserves the number 8 spot for sure. All right, coming in at number 7, we have Chain Gang All Stars. Chain Gang All Stars, one of my favorite reads of this year. And I still think about not only the characters, not only the plot, not only everything from that perspective there, but the ending. The ending of this story had me throwing the book from that perspective. So in this story, I really relate this to Black Mirror. And if you've seen Black Mirror, it's a show on Netflix that features a lot of dystopian ideas, mostly in the future. And this book is set in the future. If you commit a crime, mostly murder, you get sentenced to jail. And when you get sentenced to jail, you actually have the ability to fight for your freedom. And when I say fight for your freedom, I literally mean fight for your freedom. It's like a gladiator style freedom fight that you can end up battling other prisoners. And if you beat those prisoners, kill those prisoners, you end up climbing the ranks. And if you climb up to the top of the ranks and you last for a longer period of time, you can get released into society. But that's not the craziest part of this story. It is shown everywhere on TV. You can turn on ESPN, you end up seeing the Olympics, and the next program will be Chain Gang All Stars, and you see these people battle for their lives in this arena, and it is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. The author does a really good job at making you feel for these characters who have done heinous things. When I mean heinous things, they've murdered people. Heinous things. And this is one of my favorite reads from this year. Changing All Stars is something that I always talk about, and it really deserves the number 7 spot. Coming in at number 6 is probably one of the weirdest books I've read in my entire life, and that book is The Spirit Cuts Through Water. The Spirit Cuts Through Water is a book that makes it into my top 10, but it's not a book that I recommend for everyone. I'm going to repeat that. The Spirit Cuts Through Water is a book that I do not recommend to everyone. It's probably one of the most beautiful written books. Simon Jimenez did everything and more when it came to The Spirit Cuts Through Water. However, I can see how people would DNF that book. I got to 200 pages and I was so close to DNFing it, but I am so glad I didn't, because an absolute masterpiece. And I feel like I shouldn't describe it. I want you to go into it like I went into it, open mind, no notes, no synopsis. I just went straight into the book and read it. And while it was very confusing for about 70% of the book, 5 stars. 5 stars. Simon Jimenez did a great thing with The Spirit Cuts Through Water, and it definitely made it to the number 6 spot for sure. All right, top 5. At number 5 is actually a book called The Fifth Season. The Fifth Season, just like The Spirit Cuts Through Water, is probably one of the most unique books that I've read this year. And wow, this book I read earlier this year, and I still think about it to this day. Like, I need to pick up Obelisk Gate. I need to pick up The Stone Sky, because these characters stick with me to this day. This book follows 3 incredibly strong women. If you read this book, please don't give away any spoilers, as they navigate a post-apocalyptic world. And in this world, there's 5 seasons. In the 5th season, it's always a cataclysmic activity that happens. And the magical system in this one is so amazingly unique. That is something that I think about to this day. The ending is absolutely insane, that I am pinching myself, asking myself why I haven't continued the series, but I will pick the series back up. The Broken Earth trilogy, I will pick it back up before the year ends for sure. You can quote me on that, but it was a great debut. Love this book so much. I recommend to everyone, even though it is one of those books that's very uniquely written, it's a book that you definitely should check out. The 5th Season, coming in at number 5. Coming in at number 4 features a author who has recently entered into my top authors of all time, my must-buy authors of all time, and that is Blood Over Brighthaven by Emma Wang. Emma Wang, who is the genius who wrote Sword of Kaigen, followed it up with this absolute masterpiece. Blood Over Brighthaven is one of the most insane books I've read, has one of the most insane magical systems, has characters who you love to hate, hate to love, and I just really can't stress enough how much you need to read this book. Now, if you don't have the art copy of it, or if you don't have this copy of it, you have to wait till October to buy it. But I'm telling you, clear your calendars, because in October, you need to get this. You need to get this. So without going too far into spoilers, in this one, you follow a high mage as she tries to climb and become the first female high mage, but she doesn't know exactly where magic comes from. And she tries to unearth that with her handy dandy assistant, Tommy, if you know, you know. And she ends up peeling back the layer to figure out where magic comes from. And where it comes from is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. This story here is something that I think about daily, and I'm so glad it's getting more recognition now. So glad Emma Wang is getting all the recognition now, because wow, absolutely wow. Blood of Brighthaven 100% deserves that number 4 spot for sure. Coming in at number 3. Now we're at top 3, and this is where it got really shaky in terms of trying to figure out what my top 3 is. But I had to choose. I had to choose. The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter was my number 1 read of this year for the longest. For the longest. This book is incredible. And I'm so glad more people are talking about it, especially after, I posted my TikTok and everybody else posted their TikTok, because Evan Winter, you wrote an absolute masterpiece. You follow the main character, Tao, as he goes on the craziest revenge tour after so many things happens to him. He goes on a crazy revenge tour. This African-inspired fantasy, with some, great magical systems in this book from there. And you just follow a main character who is just after straight revenge. And oh my gosh. The first time I read this book, I was thrown off. And the Burning series itself, I have Fires of Vengeance right there. I read that. That's another masterpiece. I can't wait for book 3 to come out. But this one, The Rage of Dragons, just the gas that's in this book. The gas that's in this book is absolutely crazy. The writing is so beautiful. Evan Winter, I don't know how you came up with what you came up with in this book, but sir, you put everything and more in this book. I love this book so much. And like I said, this was my number 1 read for the longest. It got dethroned very, very recently, but The Rage of Dragons, number 3 for sure. All right, now, if you thought the final 3 was tough, coming down to the final 2 was absolutely insane. This was really tough. This is really, I think it's really 1A, 1B, but I have to make a decision. And my number 2 read of 2024 so far is Demon in White. Demon in White is the 3rd book in the Sun Eater series. And oh my gosh, this book has everything. So if you're not familiar with the Sun Eater series, at least for now, I'm caught up to this book here. The first book is Empire of Silence. The second book is Howling Dark. And this one is just absolute gas. So I think what I really like about this book, it mixes sci-fi and fantasy as you follow Hadrian Marlowe as he tries to still navigate the entire universe to figure out his purpose in life, right? From that perspective there. And I'm not going to go too far in spoilers because it's the 3rd book of the series, but please pick up Empire of Silence. While Empire of Silence is a great read, it's not like going to be something that's going to blow you away. It may blow some people away, but it's not going to be like, hey, like this is the best book ever. It's a Howling Dark. Howling Dark was really close to this. Really close to this. Demon in White was just absolutely nuts. Absolutely nuts. Christopher Ruocchio, Sun Eater series. Like, I can't wait to get to the 4th book, Kingdoms of Death, and the 5th book, which I don't really know what the name of it is. It's probably Children of something, but man, I still think about this book to this day. To this day. Like, I think I'm going to reread the last few chapters of this before I get to Kingdoms of Death, just because the last few chapters of this was absolute gas. Demon in White, number 2. I'm putting up number 3. Number 2 so far this year. And finally, I know you all can guess what this is. Like, do I even need to say this? Do I even need to conclude this video? Like, do I even need to do that? Words of Radiance, the 2nd book in the Stormlight Archive. What more can I say? What more can I say? This is the number 1 book of all time. This is the best book ever. Best book of all time. You gotta name me better books than this, and you gotta give me all the points why, because this has some of the best magical system, has some of the best battle scenes, has some of the best character developments in this one. This really solidified this series for me. Way of Kings was amazing. Don't get me wrong. Way of Kings was amazing, but this book right here, every single page, and again, 1,300 pages of this, every single page, gas. Oathbringer was great too. Don't get me wrong. Oathbringer was great too. Oathbringer probably has the best Sanderson out of all these books. But Words of Radiance, oh man, I've lost so much sleep on this. I think Way of Kings, it took me 2 weeks and a couple days. This took me like a week. This was more pages than Way of Kings. It took me a week because I could not put this book down. I lost so much sleep because of this book, because of the series, actually. And I'm excited for Rhythm of War. I'm caught up to all the novellas. I'm excited for Rhythm of War. I need to read that. And in truth, when In Truth comes out in December, and ready for it. But this will always hold a special place for me. Words of Radiance, absolutely, absolutely not. All right, so there you have it. My top 10 of 2024, the first half of 2024 so far. Like I said, let me know what your top 10 are. Let me know in the comments, and I'll definitely, hopefully, check it out in the second half of 2024. But it was really hard to come up with a 10 out of the 29. And again, you're probably saying, oh, you only read 29 books. I've read some very big books, which I think it averaged like 600, 700 pages. But that's my top 10 so far. Very curious what your top 10 is. And as always, BookTube, as always, happy reading.